I feel like songs are a little bit akin to the Horcrux from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like a tiny piece of your soul. The album more so, I think, but I guess at least the way I write, I'm trying to be vulnerable. It's a way you're expressing something deep inside you a lot of the time.
All right, Madison, we are back on the Indie Magazine podcast.
We've got an interesting episode today with Caleb Darger, a mutual friend of ours, a musician based in Utah with a new album dropping September 14th and a release show at the Velour Live Music Gallery in Provo, if you're familiar with that area.
And then stick around after as we discuss some of the shows and movies we've been watching. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a long time, it feels.
Back in Utah, I think the last time I saw you was you had come down for a show with Amanda at Bar Lubish.
Oh, was it that long ago?
I think it was 2019.
Yeah. Was it though? Was it pre-pandemic? Might have been.
Yeah, because I left for London in 21, and I think you guys have been out in DC for a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say I've been to LA since that time, but probably when you weren't there.
Yep, that makes sense.
Where are you at nowadays, Madison?
I'm just in Salt Lake still.
Let's make sure we get it completely right. Darger, not Darger, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You have a new album coming out soon. What is the release date for your new album?
Yeah, so my new album is called Fault Line, and it comes out September 14th.
September 14th, and that's going to be on Apple, Spotify, everywhere else?
Anywhere you stream that I know of. It's going to be up
YouTube
there.
Music.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh,
Good.
boy.
It's like the bottom of the barrel. That's what I use, and everyone makes fun of me for it.
I'm not familiar with the interface of YouTube Music, but I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, it's like they're all clones of each other at this point, but
Yeah.
I don't have ads on YouTube now, so it's, the only benefit.
It's all like you get like YouTube Premium with it or whatever.
Yeah.
That's a game changer. I don't even watch YouTube that much, but when I do.
But when I do, the ads are obnoxious.
I've been
But
watching
your
a lot of
album is
them
going to
big.
be on YouTube.
Yeah.
Ad-free, baby.
Ad-free.
Ad-free. I was going to ask, too, I know things have been changing. Are you still selling your album? I'm guessing like a Bandcamp situation. Do you still send things out to press for CDs and the rest?
No, the game has changed as far as what a press kit looks like.
Yeah.
For several years now, there's been like virtual press kits you can send. And I do that on occasion, but in my experience, the juice hasn't really been worth the squeeze in terms of the effort of tracking down the email addresses and crafting a personalized email so you don't just come off like some spammer that's, please listen to me and I don't know anything about you. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a different landscape from 10 years ago even, when selling CDs was still decently viable and a good way to make revenue. The margin was high. And on this one, I hear that in some circles CDs, like physical CDs, are coming back, maybe amongst like younger generations. And I know cassettes have always had their fans. There's always been like a small group of cassette aficionados. And of course vinyl is just getting bigger. But I thought about cassettes because like, those are cheap to make, and some people just want a physical piece of, physical copy of the music to bring home with them. And vinyl would be awesome, but there's a minimum order quantity that I don't think is financially viable for me. I might sell them all in 10 years. It's a big upfront cost, and there's the turnaround time. I think I read like Jack White, he like owns a vinyl pressing company or something, and it still takes him like 7-8 months to get his vinyls.
Oh my gosh.
So even at the top of the food chain, it just takes forever. So
Yeah. I guess it's fun to have those options. But yeah, I remember seeing you at the Velour 2010, 2011 with your band there. And of course, bought a CD. Everyone who came through, I'd buy little like 5-track EPs from people and disc jackets that just taped a cover on top. But now I don't see that as much, especially even in LA, going to different venues. You don't really see CDs out there anymore. It's maybe a vinyl if there's someone a little bit bigger. But yeah, I don't see the same physical representation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if there was more people wanted demand for that, maybe I'd do it. And I think there's, I don't know, seems to be a return of kind of a DIY ethos. At least it's maybe make it look like it's DIY anyway. So I could do the burn my own discs and just write the track listing on another disc and sell those. I'm sure some people would love that. But
A little verbatim disc with some Sharpie on there.
yeah.
Let's talk about who you are inside and outside of music. And I know a bit of your story. Madison, I don't know how much, but let's take it back to the beginning. You were born right there in the heart of Utah?
Yeah. Harriman, Utah.
Harriman, Utah.
Harriman.
Yeah, that's right. And if you live in Utah now, you know of Harriman as a city that's blown up over the last 10 years. You probably know multiple people that live in Harriman.
I do.
But growing up, there's a few hundred people there. And
Oh, man.
I remember the first stoplight we got. We got a gas station. And so me and my buddies rode our bikes down just to buy candy bars. Because before that, you had to drive like 15, 20 minutes into Riverton to get anything, gas, groceries, whatever. So it's definitely a trip to see how it's blown up.
Yeah, and your parents, I know your dad ran for mayor there. They still live in Harriman?
Yeah, it's still there.
That's
same
awesome.
house.
Okay.
Wow. My only attachment to Harriman is that there's some pond there that I went skinny dipping in one time. And it was really dark, and it was by a bunch of rich people homes. And it was one of the riskiest things I've done, because I think if they'd have known what I was up to in that pond, that I would have gotten the police called on me.
Were you by yourself?
No.
That's creep behavior right there.
No, I was not by myself.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Yeah, I think I know the little pond you're talking about, and that wasn't built until my junior or senior year of high school. So I went there a couple times.
Yeah. Well,
Some
cool.
different-
Then we both have been there.
So, yeah, different memories of Harriman for the two of you.
I'm sure the listeners don't really care that much about Harriman.
Now we know. Yeah.
I don't know. Now that I've mentioned skinny dipping in a pond in Harriman, maybe they're super interested in going to Harriman.
Yeah, because that's the only place you can do that.
Let's talk about music. Yeah. When did you first get started with music? Did your parents hand you a guitar growing up? What was your first introduction to picking up on music?
So I grew up, and I don't know how much we want to get into this, but in a very conservative religious family. And popular music was not really welcome in the home. I didn't hear a lot of it. My dad listened to, and my parents are fairly young. They're mid-50s now. My dad listened to like old country, loved like Johnny Cash, Don Williams, and my mom listened to a lot of like 60s doo-wop and 60s rock, Roy Orbison, the Everly Brothers, Beatles.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of that music, not a lot of like 80s rock, or once I got into like middle school, I had a little boombox with the old one with like the two speakers and the CD player on top and the cassette in the front, and then you could dial in the radio. And so then I'd start tuning into the radio and just listening to that after school all day, or getting copies of CDs from friends, going over, oh, you have this CD on your computer, let me bring over a blank and copy that over.
Yeah.
So that's like music listening. But as far as actually playing, my parents got me into violin lessons when I was really young. And I did that. And I think it was one of those things where, you know, I was just stubborn and didn't like being told what to do, even though I enjoyed it. But I just felt like I was doing it for them. So I quit, and then I was probably like 10, 11, and then a few years later, I was 14, and I wanted to play the guitar. I'd gotten really into like punk music and stuff, and especially the movie School of Rock really influenced me to be like, I want to play an instrument, like I want to be in a band.
Yeah.
And so I asked my dad for a guitar, and he said, whatever you earn, I'll match it. I saved up, mowed lawns, and did whatever. Earned $100, so he matched it with $100. So I bought a little like Stratocaster starter kit with the crappy little amp and stuff, and never had a guitar lesson. Just sat there teaching myself, and it was really fun.
How does it feel to be God's favorite? That you just have musical skill like that? That is so frustrating to me.
I would take that label if I was a better guitarist, but I'm still a fairly mediocre guitarist. I'm just passable.
Okay, good.
I was going to say, yeah, you knowing how to read music, did that help? Did you read sheet music at all, or was it just tabs and listening by ear and stuff?
No, I'm not great at reading music because I did the Suzuki method, which doesn't really focus on reading music. I can read a treble clef, but that's about it. And a lot of the guitar tablature isn't written that way. So, that didn't really come into play at all when I was learning guitar.
Nice, okay. So you're playing guitar. When do you take School of Rock to heart and start the first band? In high school?
No, it was that year. It was October that I got my guitar, and then I had a buddy who told me he was getting a drum set for Christmas, and so I told my other friend to ask for a bass, and I was like, we're just going to do this. No, literally zero musical background from those two. And so Christmas comes, they get their instruments. We go to my buddy's house that got the drums. We're like 14, 15. And we don't know how to set up a drum kit. YouTube isn't what it is
Yeah.
And so we're looking at the picture on the package that came with the drums and just, okay, I think it goes like this, and putting it together. And I'm like, okay, I got these songs that I've written. And so just play this beat, hit the whatever that cymbal thingy is, like this. And with the bass guitar, I just realized that the top 4 strings are strung the same as a guitar. So I just told my buddy, okay, yeah, look at my top finger, just press your finger there. And he was basically hanging out on the low E string the whole time. But yeah, we got a little bit better and just evolved from there. Went through a lot of different lineup changes over the years, just different bands, and played with different people. And I ended up, like, this is funny thinking about it. My friend, the drummer, he was just like not that into it. And so I was like complaining to other people, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to kick him out of the band. He's just not committed. And he got wind of it and he quit before I kicked him out.
Nice.
So I was just like serious about it. I was like, I'm gonna be a rock star. And if you're not 100% in, then you're 100% out.
Savage. Yeah, what were some of those early band names?
Oh, no.
You don't have to tell the ones that'll get you in trouble.
I don't think it would get me in trouble.
Okay, good.
But the very first band was called Fake Democracy.
Fake
And
Democracy.
that shows you how
That's a sick name.
it's just my 15-year-old take on how the U.S. is not a real democracy. So that was the first band name. And then it gets worse from there. Allegiance is Dead. Then I was like in a metalcore band called Leave Her to Heaven, and everyone just thought it was Leave Her to Heaven, like a lever that you can pull and get to heaven.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then I was in a straight edge band called Bury This City, and we just went by BTC. And,
Nice.
And then I was in a pop punk band after that called Chin Up, which is actually a really cool name in my opinion. Chin Up
That's
with
fun.
an exclamation mark, in the vein of 4 Year Strong, A Day to Remember, that kind of thing. And then, yeah, that was in high school. And then later in high school, like senior year, I started the Mighty Sequoyah.
Yeah, that's how I first saw you play Battle of Bands, Mighty Sequoyah. And was that still with your high school crew? Because I want to say your brother was part of it for a little or something like that, or was that some college folks?
Yeah, my brother was an original member of the Mighty Sequoyah, and the rest of them, no, they didn't come from like the punk or hardcore background, and no overlap from the previous bands.
Right now, your current album you're doing is under your name, right? Not another band? All Caleb Darger?
Correct. I think one of the best parts about playing music is playing with other people when you're all just vibing together. But it's also a challenge to just, especially the older you get, the schedules to line up and musical interests. And some of the best musicians are usually songwriters, and so they're all wanting to lead their own band, understandably. And then if they're not a songwriter, they're like getting paid in LA or Nashville as a session musician. So it is really hard to find just a bass player that's actually a bassist and not a guitarist playing bass. You know, which I actually have for the first time in my life in my band right now, and it's awesome. But yeah, I just got sick of relying on other people when it came to doing music, and especially as I moved out of Utah and I didn't really have a musical network, and I had written these folk songs that were easy enough to play by myself, or my wife, Pika, plays keys and sings harmonies, and so a lot of them are easy enough for the two of us to put on a good show. And I just thought I don't want to have to start over again. Every time maybe the lineup changes, it's not the same band anymore. So I got to come up with a new band and work from the ground up in terms of getting awareness of what this musical project is. Yeah. So yeah, I just thought I would run with my name. And I thought I would just be doing a lot of solo shows or duo shows. But moving back to Utah, I've plugged back into the scene and reconnected with a lot of great musicians. And I have an awesome band around me now, just maybe the best, most talented group of musicians that I've played with, at least since the Mighty Sequoyah days. And that's not a knock on anyone I've played with since, but just as a collective, it's an awesome group of musicians, and they show up to band practice having practiced, and so we're just rehearsing, and I'm not teaching them the songs in practice. And more than that, we like hanging out. It's fun, and that's really hard to find people that you vibe with musically who are like serious about it, but also you want to hang out with after you're done playing, go get a drink or whatever. So I'm having like the most fun I've ever had playing.
Can you talk for a minute about the Utah music scene? What makes it unique, or any of the history? What makes it special?
Yeah, and I'm probably not the best person to talk about this just because I was away for 5 years and it's changed a lot since then. You know?
Okay, yeah.
But I do think having Salt Lake and Provo, two kind of sister cities so close by each other. Very distinct, of course. It's easy enough to go back and forth as a band. And so you got this whole metropolitan area of people to be part of the scene, I guess. What else makes it unique? I think Mormons tend to have an emphasis on music. A lot of people growing up in church, maybe you guys took piano lessons or things like that. No, Madison's shaking his head.
Well, neither of
wish.
us did, but
Your
we
parents
wish.
failed you.
I know.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I'm talking about. Every other person, took piano lessons. And so that sets, I think, a really solid foundation musically and creates an interest in music. So I do think somewhere like Provo always punched above its weight in terms of musical talent and the bands coming out of it. And I think because of that, excellence breeds excellence. When there's a foundation laid, then that makes it easier for younger musicians to envision themselves there or beyond there. I remember being a teenager and going to Velour shows or Kilby Court or whatever, and seeing local musicians and being like, wow, that's awesome. They're filling this venue. I want to do that. They're touring. Like, I want to do that. I can do that. And so I think that's an important part of it.
Yeah, it makes it seem a little more attainable at times.
Yeah, I think so. And by now I've had several buddies or known of people at least that got major record deals, made it out of Utah, so to speak. And so you can see, okay, this is doable, at least for some people.
Who are some of the bands, acts out of Utah from when you lived there before or even now that you're like, this is someone that everyone should listen to? This is someone that everyone needs to check out, in addition to yourself, of course.
Yeah, I'm obviously number one. I always like Desert Noises stuff. They're not really playing anymore. They moved to Nashville several years ago. And at least they're not touring anymore last time I talked to them, but they've still got a really great discography to check out if you're into kind of like that mid-2000s indie rock Band of Horses type of vibe. They do it really well.
I really like them.
Thinking about some of the other bands from beyond, Isaac Russell, from before, Isaac Russell was one guy that got signed to Columbia and had a really awesome record. And he's playing in a band called Uncle Reno now. I don't know really how active they are, but they have cool music. So my buddy Nathan Hardiman put out a record not too long ago, and it's actually awesome start to finish. He happens to be married to Little Moon, who makes cool music. She just won the NPR Tiny Desk Concert contest. So that's really cool, making Utahns proud. Recently played with C-Slack and Goldmyth, and they're doing really cool things. Robert Loud, who used to be in Fictionist and is touring with the Killers these days, is putting out new music these days, and his latest single sounds really good. My boys in Strange Familia are always a good listen. Based out of Salt Lake, they have like more kind of dancey indie pop music, and their live shows are always awesome. And who else? There are a lot. Cactus Trees, this girl out of Logan I met at Fork Fest last year, and she makes cool music. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some.
My friend's brothers and the Harpers.
Yeah, of course. One of the guitarists in my band plays drums, and they're awesome. They make great music, and they are I think they got a lot of momentum. They just got back from a tour and seem to be doing really cool things. One of their guitarists also plays in Sego, who has roots in Salt Lake. I think they're based in LA now, but they still come out and play here a lot. So, still a lot of cool stuff going on, which is cool. I feel like I lived through the heyday of Provo and Salt Lake music, but of course, an old-timer like myself nowadays is going to say that there's a lot of people making awesome music still.
I was going to say that was right after Imagine Dragons, Neon Trees. And who got the big record deal?
Isaac Russell signed to Columbia, and then Fictionist signed to Atlantic. Yeah, Desert Noises. I don't know if they signed with a major label. I don't think they did, but they were touring and doing really well. And and it seems like even some of the smaller bands from that era, like Band and The Archer's Apple and Timber, who is now singer from that band, is Fireboy, who's signed to a major label now.
Oh, I didn't know he was signed. That's cool.
I was almost going to do a Mighty Sequoyah reunion, actually, I'd reconnected with some of the members of that band, and they played with me at Fork Fest last year. And they were like, yeah, that'd be fun. Just do like a one-off reunion show. And we still might. I'm just really busy with my current music projects. So
hard to go back in time.
We'll see. Yeah, if there was big enough demand, like I thought maybe we'd do a Kickstarter or whatever it is these days, like a prior funded
Mhm.
Okay, if we sell like 150 tickets, then we'll know that we can
Yeah.
make it worth people's while to come out and do this and rehearse. And Hannah has 5 kids nowadays.
Things have changed in 10
She
years.
had 2 and then had triplets. So yeah, hard to get her away to rehearse.
That'd be fun. I'd drive up for fly up for that.
Yeah. In theory, there would be some demand, but would there be enough demand? We'll see.
Yeah, we
Keeping
will
that on the
see.
tape. Maybe if people are listening to this who happen to be Mighty Sequoyah super fans, they can reach
Yeah.
out to me and let me know. Good friends with Strange Familia, and they've got a really, I think, unique sound.
They do a lot of producing too, right?
Yeah, so Brecken, who's in Strange Familia, mixed and mastered my record, and now he's playing bass with me.
Nice. Oh, okay. There's your bassist. That's awesome. I remember being at his house one time. You were recording something for Child Ivory 2017.
Oh yeah, I remember Angie.
Yeah, Angie.
He
Yep.
produced that track. He did an awesome job.
Yeah.
So he was like indie pop aficionado. Like he did it really well. And he's gotten into the country craze that some people have been swept up in the last few years.
Yep.
And a lot of my current songs are in that vein, feature a lot of pedal steel and things like that. And so I think he was really excited to get his hands on this project and, hone his chops a little bit with it. So I think he did a great job.
Yeah. Let's actually just transition there into this album. When did you start writing this? Is this some stuff when you were in DC, or is this kind of a purely back in Utah album? And what were some of the influences that got you started on this one?
Yeah, some of the songs are super old. I've been sitting on.
Okay.
There's this song Doug Fir that I wrote in 2013, and just a folk song. I didn't have a project to do anything with it, so it just sat there, in my head basically. And a couple others I was doing. I think maybe you both know about this project. I was doing a song club with some friends a while back, and I recently started it back up. They've been doing it, and I recently joined back up with it. Where they write and release a song every month based on a theme. And so I'd written some songs from there that didn't really fit into any of my music projects. I was doing Child Ivory, that kind of dream pop band at the time. And so I just had a handful of songs that didn't really fit in any of the projects I was doing. And so that's what some of the older ones are. And then there's some newer ones. There's a song called Strawberry Moon that I wrote about moving back to Utah. So that's a very recent one. And a song called Alexandra that I wrote for my little sister about being so far away from her in DC and feeling disconnected. So yeah, it's songs that kind of span this 10-year time period. Most of them more recent, several of them older. And eventually I had enough of them that I was like, these work well enough together. Let's make an album out of it. And so I'm really excited. Despite the time span between the songs, I feel like they blend together really well. It feels like a nice cohesive album. And I hope that people will listen to it start to finish in that way, even though most people don't do that anymore.
I know I'm always arguing with people. I'm like, don't take a track out of the middle. Please start to finish and hear the whole story as it's supposed to be written.
Yeah, and I'm as guilty as anyone of doing that. If it's an artist that I like and I see they've put out a full-length album, which is becoming less common as well, then I'm like, take some time, go on a drive, and try to listen to this all the way through and soak it in.
Yeah, who do you think or what albums can you say influenced you with this one? I know you said there's a bunch of older songs, but for anything newer, who else have you listened to recently where you were like, oh, I can hear a little bit of them in what I've just written?
Yeah, as far as newer artists, I think there's Nathaniel Rateliff. I guess he's not newer, but he's still putting out music.
Yeah.
Kurt Vile. And I like a lot of the newer. Lizzie McAlpine's new album is great. And man, I don't know why I'm feeling so on the spot when you asked me to name drop other artists.
No worries. You've been working on your own album.
Yeah, it's funny. I end up listening to these songs like hundreds of times probably just over the course of recording and laying down different tracks and bringing other people into the studio to add parts to them, and then just in the mixing process, being in the studio with Brecken, and then going home listening to the mixes and making notes. And so if they had been on Spotify, I would be my top played artist by far.
When you're assembling an album, are there any tracks where you're like, this is just for me, I just got to put it out there? Is there something where you know that maybe it won't hit everybody the same way, but you're like, I have to have it published because it's going to kill me if it doesn't come out?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer is yes. Where I'm like, I feel like songs are a little bit akin to the Horcrux from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like a tiny piece of your soul. The album more so, I think, but I guess at least the way I write, I'm trying to be vulnerable. It's a way you're expressing something deep inside you a lot of the time. And there's some artists that, they can write the song and no one else ever hears it, and that's enough for them. But I don't know. For me, I feel like there's this sense of completion once it's recorded and, out there. Nobody ever listens to it. It's okay. I did what I could at this point. And now if somebody else connects with it, that's amazing. So one of the songs on this album was like that. It's called I Know I've Been Cold. And I know it's a lame name for a song, but I just couldn't come up with anything else based on the lyrics. But I Know I've Been Cold was a song that I wrote several years back, and I didn't think it would be anyone's favorite. There's no chorus in it. There isn't necessarily a catchy melody. And a lot of my songs don't really have choruses taken after Roy Orbison in that way. They just move along from section to section. And this is one of those songs, and I was like, I don't know. I like it, and it fits, and I'm putting on this album. I didn't expect it to be anyone's favorite, but I thought it was good enough that nobody would be like, skip. But I was working with this PR company, and I basically had a budget for one song for them to help promote, and I sent them like 3 or 4 songs, and I was like, okay, these are kind of stuff that I have coming up as far as singles. So you tell me what one you think is going to land best and you feel best about promoting, and we'll go with that one. And to my surprise, they chose that song, I Know I've Been Cold.
Wow.
And the response was awesome, probably partly because I had a PR company behind it. But even just amongst my friends or a couple strangers on the internet that felt they really connected to it. And I think there's just it's a brooding song, but it's vulnerable and emotional, and I think connects to a certain type of person.
Last question. When your daughter gets older, what are the 3 albums you're most excited to share with her and to sit down and listen to together?
I've talked to, just to drag this answer out, I've talked to other friends who have toddlers who have refined and good music tastes, who know bands, who request, hey, no, I want to listen to the Strokes. I'm like, how does your 5-year-old know the Strokes? I had no conception.
Yeah.
And they're like, I just don't play kid music. I just play the music I like.
Wow.
That's what they, grow up with and are used to. And so I think it, in this era, there's so much kid music, Disney soundtracks or whatever that are popular. And I'm not going to try to make sure my daughter can't listen to those or whatever if she likes it. But for me, I'm hoping that I'm being intentional when I play songs that she's going to connect to them and develop her own kind of refined music tastes as time goes on. And the albums I'm most excited to share with her, probably just my favorite albums. Any of the early Bob Dylan albums, The Freewheelin', or The Times They Are Changing, and then Bloom by Beach House.
Yeah.
Just, I constantly come back to that album. And I think Bon Iver has music that is really timeless, especially for I'm a Forever Ago, but even as he started getting a little bit more experimental, a self-titled album and things like that, I think those are albums that will be fun to. But I'm also curious, curious because I think our generation, if we're raised with parents who are into music, I know you were, Tristan, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Madison, if you had parents that were
Not really
excited about music.
They like music, but not enough to get me into piano playing.
Yeah. A lot of our first exposure is, oh yeah, my dad loved like AC/DC or Rolling Stones or whatever. Maybe for you is more country stuff, Tristan. So those artists that you grew up liking because of your parents. And I'm wondering, for me, in my case, like I was passed down like 60s music and old 60s like cowboy music.
Yeah.
And so that's already 2 generations ahead of me. And is the generation below me, my daughter, going to be into that? I hope so. I think it has enough staying power to be relevant and to connect with people, even younger kids. Maybe they'll be like, no, you're missing out on NSYNC, Dad. That's the vintage good stuff right there.
You're missing out on Brat Summer.
Brat Summer.
Yeah, of course they're going to be into their generation stuff. What is the old music they're going to like? Is there a cutoff, like where we listen to like 40s kind of jazz singer music and we're like, this is cheesy as hell,
Yeah. Hard to listen to Herman's Hermits these days. You're like, what the hell were they on right there? We all had to be taking drugs.
Yeah, that Key and Peele skit. Give me some of that old school stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
The old school. That's good.
He comes up to the DJ. You can cut this. It's not that interesting if you don't know what I'm talking
No.
about. But he comes up to the DJ and he's like, I need an old school hit, brother. And he's like, all right, okay. So like some Run DMC? No, I'm talking about old school. He's like, okay, like Easy-E. And he just keeps going older back to like 40s music. That's what I'm talking about.
That's good. I'll link it in the show notes. I do hope for your daughter and the next generation, everybody else, that they'll be able to have discovery and say, oh, this is new. This is new to me. Maybe my dad didn't like it, but it's something else there.
Yeah, the Beatles, one of those bands when I was dating my wife, she's, what kind of music do you listen to when you first met?
Yeah.
And I was like, I know this is a lame answer, but I've been listening to a lot of Beatles lately. And she's like, that's not lame at all. The Beatles are awesome.
Yeah.
But to me, it was, that's an uninspired answer. Everybody listens to the Beatles, but obviously not everyone does.
Okay, Fault Line comes out, you said September 14th.
It's going to be streaming at 12:01 a.m. And then we'll have the big album release show that night at Velour in Provo.
Cool.
Awesome.
My buddy Mike, who played pedal steel on the album, and I flew him out to track for that last year. He's flying out again for the album release show.
Nice.
And then my friend Amanda, who you know, out of LA, she tracked harmonies on several of the songs, and she's coming out for it as well. I'm going to be playing an opening set. It should be an amazing night, and if you can make it to Utah for it, you should.
That'll be awesome, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks again for coming on, and everyone stick around, listen to a song from Caleb.
Avoiding cracks
have you seen recently that you want to talk about this week?
I recently rewatched all of Loki, the Loki series on
Oh,
Disney Plus.
fun.
Did you watch that?
I didn't finish the second season, which I know is
Oh,
a
dude.
tragedy.
Yeah, so I really liked it when I first saw it all, but watching them because it's only 6 episodes a season, which isn't actually that much, and watching them back to back within the space of a week, I'm convinced the Loki series is probably one of the best things Marvel has made. It's so well done.
High praise.
Yeah, everything from Tom Hiddleston really brings it as Loki in this one. If you're unfamiliar with the series, in Avengers Endgame, the Avengers they muff it up with the Space Stone with the Tesseract, and Loki picks it up and he vanishes. And so the Loki series picks up right after that. And so he's a variant. He's not the sacred timeline Loki. He's a variant of Loki. And it's about him going into the TVA, which is the Time Variance Authority. And this is I think it's the first episode is it's really I loved it because you get this Loki variant who's all up on his Loki high horse, as Loki is, and he, over the course of the first season, kind of admits that all of his bravado is a cover for fear and cowardice. And watching Loki watch his own life happen in the sacred timeline where he's like, yeah, I knew this would happen. I knew this would happen. But then having it go into Thor the Dark World, because this Loki variant didn't experience that, but the sacred timeline Loki stuff did. And then watching his mom die, and then ultimately watching him and Thor become friends over the course of Thor Ragnarok, and then watching himself die at the hands of Thanos is a really powerful sequence that Tom Hiddleston just does an amazing job with, reacting to the events of his own life. And then I think in the music, as far as soundtrack goes, I think whoever did the soundtrack for this one really knocked it out of the park because it's recognizable and it's got its own personality as compared to the other Marvel movies. And then set design, the TVA is such a unique kind of cinematic space to play in compared to other Marvel flicks that are in New York or in San Francisco or whatever. The TVA is kind of borrows from this retro futuristic 60s kind of Jetsons era future. And I just think it's so imaginative, it's so creative. And I think as far as narratively, it does a really good job at it with the multiverse kind of stuff is rather than just being oh my gosh, there's different versions of me out there. They do the whole there's different versions of me out there. And it's a mirror for the character to do self-reflection. And oh, I really am just a guy caught in these patterns, because there's a moment in the first season where Loki goes into the void and he's surrounded by different variants of himself, and all of them are backstabbing each other and all of them are double crossing each other. And he's just oh my gosh, this is me. And so he's confronted with his patterns and his shadows. And I love it. And then season 2, I don't know how much you want me to talk about season 2, because I don't know how much you've seen season 2.
Although I haven't seen everything, I did hear a lot from my other Marvel friends in town who have shared quite a bit. In fact, I walked in on the last episode being watched, so I do know what happens at the very end.
Okay, cool. Then, yeah, we'll talk about it. I thought season 2 was so well done. I loved the Loki is time slipping, and it's something that he doesn't have control over, but that over the course of the episode, because the time loom is broken, that's just kind of a thing for them to... It's just a plot device that they're using. But eventually Loki learns how to control his time slipping, and he goes back to the crucial moment in the end of season 1 where his variant Sylvie kills He Who Remains. And Loki is confronted with the fact that to be a hero is not to be burdened with glorious purpose it's a burden. And he doesn't want it. And over the course of all of season 2, he's the character's Loki, you just want the throne that you've always wanted. He's that's the last thing that I want. And it's the most believable character growth for him to be no, actually, I actually don't want everything that I told you that I wanted before. I'm beyond that. I'm past that. And for him to spend potentially centuries, or if not thousands of years, in time loops trying to fix the problem of the series, ultimately accepting that the only way forward is for him to take on the purpose of holding together all of the timelines so that they don't collapse in on themselves, and then becoming the god of stories. I don't know if you're familiar with that part of the comics.
I'm not.
Loki, yeah, Loki's the god of mischief and the god of lies. And in the comics, at one point, they kind of rebranded him, where lies are stories that we tell ourselves and each other. And if you really get into the philosophy of it, everything we say is actually a lie, because the very nature of language is that it doesn't ever make contact with reality. It approaches reality, but it never touches reality. And so everything that we use, from like a picture of an atom, is a lie in some sense, because that's
a
not what
big
atoms
lie.
look like at all.
Yeah.
Atoms are not miniature solar systems. They're like clouds of probability, and it's like almost impossible for us to visualize what they actually look like. And so instead, we default to this kind of picture of a proton and electron and neutron, whatever, it's not reality. It's a lie, but it's a useful lie. And so in the comics with Loki, what they did was they rebranded him as the god of stories, and which I think is a really kind of powerful rebrand, to be like, oh, that's kind of motivating, that's compelling. And with Loki season 2, that's kind of where I think they took him, was into this god of stories, where when his whole mischief and god of lies thing is used entirely for his own like ego, then he just becomes this guy that's just nothing but like, I'm going to backstab you because of course I am. That's just who I am. And then it kind of turns around to being like, oh no, I'm going to use this power to hold together all of the multiverse. And like that final scene with him kind of ascending the stairs, transforming into his real like God self, sitting on the throne, burdened with glorious purpose, and holding together all of the timelines to create Yggdrasil, the world tree, out of all of the timelines. Like, what a compelling, like beautiful, mythological, like archetypal image. It's fantastic. I love it.
And shot really well. I mean, I know it's much of it's CGI or digital, but like the way in which they paint the scene and they show the story is pretty beautiful.
Yeah. And I'd be remiss to Owen Wilson, fantastic, coming in and just being Owen Wilson within the MCU. Like, he did a great job. And I just think everyone really brought it with the Loki series. And I understand why it only got 2 seasons, because I think that was just the story that it was told, and not every series needs 3 or 4 or 5 seasons.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure I know where the main sequence, sacred timeline story of the MCU is going, with Secret Wars and Doomsday. And of course, Loki is going to be involved, because I know what happens in the comics. And so I know kind of what character role he's playing in all of this.
I was going to say that composer you mentioned, by the way, Natalie Holt, a British composer who also composed the soundtrack for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series.
Oh, nice.
And Nightfall, Mark Hamill. Anyways, big Disney / Star Wars Marvel connections there for her. But yeah, it is a really good soundtrack. You're right.
Yeah. So that's what I was watching.
Sounds like a busy time and a good time, as we have a little break after Deadpool Wolverine before the next Marvel flick.
Yeah.
I took my talents elsewhere. My fiance really wanted to watch It Ends With Us. And I know this podcast will have come out when this movie is probably going to be wrapping up its theatrical run, or at least close to. It's based on a Colleen Hoover book, who also wrote Big Little Lies. Did you ever watch that on HBO? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic series. She wrote this book first. I have never read the book. My fiance did, as did many other women and men. Here's what I'll say. I saw the first trailer and I was like, oh no, here we go with one of these movies, another rom-com. I had not realized the weight of what the story was about at first. It's about domestic violence. Now, I will say this is where the gigantic controversy pops up. And I would love to have pop culturist on to take both sides of the story and have a full-on brawl. We'll work on that one for later. But this is one that is like hotly debated and in a huge argument fight with all kinds of people. The actor-director, Justin Baldoni, he and Blake Lively have not been getting along on this movie. She said some like kind of gross / snide things about him less so about her. But the big frustration is Blake and Ryan have a deal, Ryan Reynolds. They do not both promote their own movie at the same time. So they're both promoting one movie or the other and taking turns. Now, this movie came out mere weeks after Deadpool Wolverine. So, the beginning of her press tour, she was just talking about Deadpool Wolverine. She wasn't even talking about It Ends With Us.
What a weird thing.
I know. Weird
That's
Hollywood
weird.
power couples that even takes it further. So, here's where it gets worse. This is a story about domestic violence. In the book, as I now understand it, it tells multiple sides to the story. It tells the wife's side, it tells the husband's side, and it goes back into why is he doing this? Why is he acting out and abusing? Where does this come from? It provides a more holistic look and a gray area to where you understand, oh, there are reasons why someone does something. It's not just pure evil. It's a psychological response in addition to trauma, in addition to whatever. The problem is, Blake Lively didn't want to make that movie. During the filming, she specifically just said, I don't like that we're showing all this should be a me picture. And Justin Baldoni goes, no, the whole point of the book is to have both sides. And so you see these two stories and these characters and how they both have to make their decisions for the best of their lives and the lives that come after them. They argued on set, they fought on set. Justin Baldoni got a really terrible sty in his eye, and he's like, I'm one of the main characters. I can't have the camera on my face all day with this massive sty. And Blake Lively goes, you're being a little bitch. And just like says, you're being a prima donna. We're not going to do this. And he's like, please, I have a close up in like every other shot. What are you talking about? Anyway, and apparently he was saying some misogynistic comments or whatever else. There's been a lot of accusations, allegations. Who knows what's true? Both sides are probably at fault. Here's the bigger problem. When it came to Final Cut, Justin Baldoni, who secured the rights to the book and movie, had Final Cut, meaning he should have the final edit before it goes to screen. Not a producer, no one else. Ryan Reynolds was a producer on the film, put a bunch of money towards it, was helping out with some direction. He and Blake Lively got Final Cut. And so their cut goes to theaters, which in turn means in the movie, you don't see anything from Justin's perspective as the husband at all. He is the other. He's the actor acting upon our main character, Blake. And the movie becomes like a huge Blake fest. And so I'm watching and I'm like, this is so confusing. Why? First off, it's just like a weird rom-com, and she's not a great actor by any stretch of the imagination. At least for me, I'm like, woof. This is difficult to watch. She's not great. She just is weird with emotions. By the time his acts finally come to screen of like the first hit, the second time, they do it so rushed and so blurred that you're not even sure what happened, which is like kind of artistically cool if you're like, oh, for domestic violence victims, that sometimes is how it is. They're like, did that even happen to me? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was so blurred and the movie was PG-13 when it should have been R that I'm like, you're almost like playing down domestic violence. You're almost playing down the situation. And so by the end of the movie, when, spoiler alert, who cares? We see everything from his perspective. It's a 15-second blurred montage that we finally see more of the hits. And even then, it's not much. And I'm not saying we should glorify violence against women or show it on screen and be like, yeah, watch. But at a certain point, if we're talking about victims and what's happening, you got to watch. And you got to say, if you're in the situation as a woman, get out of it. Okay. Instead, it really doesn't land for most of it. For me, it's like a 2 star, 2.5 star. There's some good moments. There are some good scenes. There's some good cinematography here and there. I know one of our writers who wrote the review, he liked it probably more than I did. I was not a huge fan. And for me, it's just another frustrating scene of like, when a star or star power duo gets in there and can enact some change, it really just muddies the story to where you're like, what are we even watching here?
Yeah. Interesting.
So I don't think it does it for domestic violence or otherwise. And Justin Baldoni still has the rights to the sequel because Colin Hoover wrote a sequel book. I bet they're going to fight over it. I heard that Blake Lively was trying to sue, buy, whatever, get the rights. Who knows? But it's a big mess and it's just kind of gross.
Wow. Ugh. I hate seeing windows into like sometimes knowing how the sausage gets made doesn't make me like it.
No. I mean, I tell people time and time again about other like terrible Final Cut stories. I knew someone who worked on Rise of Skywalker who said they were in the theater with JJ when at the premiere, and he had not seen the final cut. He thought he had it, and then Kathleen Kennedy and co went in there and recut the film, and he was bawling. He was like, "That's not the
Oh my
movie I
gosh.
put out." So we have horror stories, and some of them are just, it's a rumor, it's a hush. But there's enough out there to be like, okay, things really get messed up when other people step in. Or like maybe Damien Chazelle in Babylon, when people don't step in, we see the other side of it, where you're like, bro, what were you doing? You should have cut.
Yeah.
Really tricky to have a really great movie come to screen. That's what I'll say.
Damn. And I know everyone's so infatuated with Ryan Reynolds, and I gotta say, I don't know. I'm not part of that cult of personality.
No, and I will say this, people are not speaking out on the Justin and Blake thing very much, and the few that have spoken out from the crew have been on Blake's side because they know the power of Ryan Reynolds right now, and he's
Yeah.
kind of, I will not put him in the same level as Weinstein. That's crazy. We're not going to go there.
Yeah.
But he definitely has this star power where studios and others are willing to just chuck money at him because he's Ryan Reynolds. And nobody wants to be on the bad side of that guy. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a weird time until he has some box office bombs or something.
Yeah. And unfortunately, he is charming and funny, although he does kind of the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, his shtick is the same. Yeah. He just dresses
Which
up
is
in
fine
different-
because there are other actors who do the same thing. I was just
Yeah.
talking about Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson's Owen Wilson in almost every movie I see.
Vince Vaughn, yeah. Viola Davis is very rarely not Viola Davis.
Yeah. But Ryan Reynolds is just, he's got such a shtick that I'm like, how long is this going to last?
Yeah. Hopefully not too terribly long. I'll wrap up what I've been watching with two other people who have shticks. One, Vince Vaughn and Bad Monkey, Apple TV Plus. A project worked on by Zoe, who we interviewed earlier this year. So kind of fun. She was instrumental in part of that with Paul Feig's company. Anyway, Bad Monkey, it's fun. It's another movie from Bill Lawrence, who show ran Ted Lasso. It's about this semi-retired, semi-kicked off, semi-brought back cop down in the Florida Keys investigating. They found an arm in the ocean. Someone found an arm in the ocean. He's like, who's the arm belong to? What's going on here? There's some good humor. It honestly reminds me of Psych a little bit, but not as goofy. It's a fun cop show, and it's goofy, and it's Florida, and it's honestly, it's been enjoyable thus far.
Interesting. And what's it
Yeah.
called? It's called
Bad Monkey.
Bad Monkey.
Apple TV
Curious.
Plus. And the final thing, and with another character an actor who can't get out of their own way, The Union with Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry and J.K. Simmons. It was a top 10 Netflix pick. It was clicked before I walked back in the room. It's not my fault. It was absolute just pig slop. For those who want something on, it is just come eat your slop, oink oink. It's just, if AI, again, AI has already been writing scripts. The AI is just like these poor artists who are just like, you know what, I'm gonna write something in the vein of generally acceptable and not great. So that's The Union. It's like if Born Identity was produced by Kellogg's. That's what it is.
Wow.
It's the cornflakes of spy movies. It's really bad. And Catholic Mark Wahlberg is just at his most Catholic Mark Wahlberg. Halle
gosh.
Berry has funky hair and she's wearing a beanie in every other shot. It's a lot. So check out.
What a
if you're gonna watch
glowing review.
Sorry, folks. It took a lot for that movie to come together. The stunts, the driving. There were some really talented people involved. And I do not want to ever watch it again.
Sometimes slop is just slop.
And you know what? We're piggies. We like our slop. We hope you have enjoyed our episode today. Watch or don't watch the movies we talked about. Definitely listen to Caleb Darger's album, which comes out again September 14th. And if you are in Utah or nearby, go to his show at the Velour Live Music Gallery in Provo. It's going to be one you don't want to miss.
And until then, watch good TV and movies.
Kitty and I think that we're alright. What did you see that made you so uptight? Why do you when you've made up your mind. Were you afraid of the mess that you made then? I lost the faith, I couldn't say when. But they got nothing to lose, so they all follow you. Blame it all on me, but say you won't fall on me when you need company. Fall on me when you need company. If you're feeling down, hollow it out now. Don't pick it apart before you start now. Trumpet sound through the trees, over glass shattering. Blame it all on me, but say you won't fall on me when you need company. Fall on me when you need company. Cover it up if it's what you need. Coming undone in the space between. If what you see is all there is, can you make sense?